Our sponsor today is GLSA. For those non-members who may be dropping in on the call today, GLSA, or Group Legal Services Association, it's an affiliate of the ABA. It's a professional membership representing the legal services plan industry and provider attorneys. And joining GLSA is just a good way for solos and small firms to increase their business. Check us out at glsaonline.org. Okay, my name is Tom Martin. I'll be your host today. Our teleconference is the business call is back, capturing and converting phone leads. And I'm very excited to introduce you to today's guest, Diana Stepleton. Diana is Vice President of Partner Engagement at Ruby's Friendly professional virtual receptionist service, where she's worn many hats. Before joining Ruby, Diana spent nearly a decade on the equipment side of AT&T Lucent, and she co-owned a successful market research company for many years. She also holds a master's in business administration. Well, Diana, it's a pleasure to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. And you?
Boiling, but that's the summertime.
Yeah. Yes, yes. All right.
uh,
Shall I take over?
yeah, take it away.
Wonderful. I will. So this webinar is designed to help you and your practice thrive in the midst of this inbound call renaissance. I hope to show you why inbound calls are a powerful opportunity to grow your practice, and I want to show you how to capture that business with click-to-call functionality and excellent customer service. I'm going to give you some tips and tools and things for how to set your practice up for success so that when the phone rings, you're able to deliver that positive experience that your callers are seeking and gain new clients as a result. As he said, the presentation will take probably more like 30, 35 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions. So I always like to be done before people expect us to be done and give them back a few minutes in their day. So let's go ahead and start with some stats. This year, mobile search will drive more than 70 billion, with a B, inbound sales calls to businesses small and large. It's predicted that a whopping 162 billion calls will be made to businesses in 2019. With click-to-call functionality, smartphone users can search for, find, and call a business in seconds with just a few taps of the screen. Studies show that smartphone users not only value this convenience of calling, but the human interaction that results as well. They want those personal connections. Excuse me. You know, it used to be that people sat in front of their computers and did all their pre-purchasing research of what they wanted to buy, and as long as they could find all the information on your website, all was well. And now more and more people are doing all of that from their smartphones instead. And even though everyone makes sure that their website shows up nice and small on their screen and is usable on a small screen, the reality is that navigating that small screen is just not wildly pleasant. And so people are much more quick to find the little click to call button and hit it and call than they used to be. So phone calls are absolutely on the rise. We answer for about 8,000 businesses in the U.S. and Canada, and each of our clients' volume of calls has been on the rise for the last few years. And we do see, for example, traffic to our website, about 65 to 70% of it comes from mobile phones. So it's not just statistically that I've read this, but we see it in our own business. That this is really the wave is changing. 80% of people said that a good experience is likely to earn repeat business, so good experience on the phone. So if you're interested in connecting with live people who are eager to talk about your business, and generally most people want to do that, I'm guessing you're going to want to learn to take advantage of this click-to-call technology. So while a good phone experience leads to repeat business, 74% of people said they're likely to choose a different business after a bad phone experience. As a potential client, would you consider reaching voicemail or an automated system during business hours a good or bad experience? Yeah, most people don't think it's great. Anyway, a phone number that's not only clickable, but also easy to find is really important. Scrolling through a website on a tiny mobile screen just isn't a convenient way for smartphone users to find the information they need. Instead, they really want to be able to find your number and call it and speak to a live, friendly person who's going to help them. Without a clickable, easy to find phone number and a live person ready to be able to help, mobile callers are just not going to be impressed. So how do we optimize for phone leads? How do we make sure that we're able to take advantage of this click to call I can't say that word, renaissance? So what does your practice need in order to be able to appeal to mobile callers, make sure that you're getting the most of this? At the very basic level, you need two things. You need a phone number that's easy to find, click, and call from mobile devices. And you would be amazed how many websites don't have this. And you need a good caller experience once the person actually calls, right? So since the majority of callers are going to come through mobile search using Google, that's a great place to start is a little Google housekeeping. You want to confirm that your Google business information is up to date. So be sure there is a phone number, make sure it's correct, of course, connected to your profile. Excuse me. That's what enables the little click to call button to work. And if the phone number is not right or it's not there, that little button is not going to work. Um, you also want to make sure that just all the information on that page is accurate. And you can reach out to support.google.com if you find any of the information isn't accurate. If you don't remember what that URL is, you can Google it, right? We can find everything that way these days. So it's super important. Generally, if you Google something, and on the left-hand side, you'll see all the listings. Um, that match your Google search. But on the right side, if you search for a business, you generally will see kind of this kind of a listing, and it's the easiest way for people to find you. So as we discussed earlier, your website is also an important spot for this clickable phone number. For the mobile users who do have the time to peruse your website, you want to keep that option of clicking and calling very convenient. So the homepage is obviously an important place. Most people do think to put it at the top of their homepage or in the in the footer of their homepage. But you really want it anywhere that a user might navigate. Excuse me. So the header and footer of every page, the contact page, any page that has a call to action, any page that might have pricing information on it, or something where they get to a point in their interaction with you where they think, oh yeah, I want to hire this guy or I want to hire this gal. You want them to be able to call you, or even if it's just maybe you describe how your firm operates, and you feel like you're going to win them over at some point in this in this quote conversation of them reading the page, then you want them to be able to have this ability to say yes, I like them, I want to reach out, and click to call is definitely the way you want to do it. So so how do you make sure that the phone number is clickable from a mobile phone? There's a line of code on the bottom left of the screen, and you'll be getting copies of these slides. So if you're just on the phone and you can't see the slide right now, don't worry. But the the code that you need to make the number clickable is at the bottom left of the screen. That code includes our phone number, our 866-611-7829. So obviously not exactly that code, but that line of code with your phone number replacing ours is what you're going to want. Excuse me. So, using custom phone numbers is also a great way to drive inbound traffic and to track where it's coming from. So, you might tie custom numbers to specific marketing campaigns that you're doing so that you would know which marketing campaigns are generating which leads. If you have a local office number in addition to a toll free number, or if you have multiple offices, sometimes people will use a different number because they want to look local in a nearby community. They want people to look at that phone number and go, oh, yeah, they're here in our town, even though you may not be, that you might want to publish custom numbers for any number of different reasons. Um, and if you're making an effort to reach out to Spanish-speaking population, for example, you might want to have a custom number that specifically advertises that that number will be answered in Spanish, if you are able to do that, obviously. So with a service like Ruby, for instance, you can select a local number and forward we would give you a local number and you could forward as many of these different lines that you'd like to it, and we could help you track where your numbers are coming from. There's lots of different ways to do that. There's lots of marketing organizations that will give you different marketing lines and help track it. There's a number of different ways, but it's a really good way to understand if you're spending your marketing dollars in wise ways, and which of your methods are working the best. If you don't have an automated system for tracking or putting together, or if you don't have a good way to track where these calls might be coming from, another good way to do that would be to include it as a question on your intake form. So how did you hear about us? To help figure out which methods you're doing are being the most successful, and obviously do more of those and less of the others. So even a simple question like just, may I ask how you heard about us, can help you figure that out. And it's a very reasonable question. A lot of people don't ask it, but most people will just answer it. It's not a problem. So now that you've gotten a little handle on how to get those multiple users clicking and calling your company, let's talk about how to provide a great experience for them once they call so they will keep calling and ideally tell their friends. So in order to create a positive experience, we really need to understand why mobile users are calling in the first place. Smartphone users often reach out because they just want a quick answer. Scrolling through your website just isn't doing it for them. They may have basic questions about your practice, your areas of expertise, your hours of operation, your pricing, if you offer free consultations, any of those kinds of things. Stuff that is probably available on your website, but they may not go digging for it. And when a smartphone user needs to express a concern, they're much more likely to call because they want to have a live voice at the other end to convey that concern to. They also call when they want expert advice or guidance. Obviously, in your line of work, that's a big reason why people are calling. And all of these things, these various reasons that people are calling, they all lead from a common cause, which is this desire to connect with a real live person. So they all need a real person to answer the phone. If somebody calls and gets your voicemail, they don't know if you've gone to lunch for an hour or you've gone to the Bahamas for a week, or in our case now, somewhere cold for a week. I'd rather go somewhere cold. Um, so, they're much more likely at that point they get your voicemail to just hang up and call one of your competitors. Whereas if they get a real live person who can, even if you're not available, if they get a real live person who can say, "Oh, she's in court until 3," that gives them the peace of mind that they can give you some intake information and they can wait for that call back, but they know someone's there and friendly and helpful. Ultimately, callers want to have a conversation. They don't want to reach voicemail or an automated system, no matter how cute and clever it might be. 72% of callers who said that if they reached an automated answering system would hang up without leaving a message. And again, many of those would then call your competitor. They are calling because they want to talk to someone who can help them. And that requires not only a live person, but one who is skilled in customer service. To win business from smartphone callers, you need a friendly voice on your end of the line during business hours to welcome them and help them. By the way, in case you're curious, all these pictures are really people who work at Ruby. That live friendly voice on your end of the line, it could be you. So assuming you're not with a client or in court or in a meeting of some sort, you can answer the phone. That it is some people think it's ideal when you're available to answer your own phone. Some people think it's a horrible idea to answer your own phone. There's just totally different camps on that. But the reality is you aren't necessarily always available to answer your own phone. So having someone to be able to back you up is quite an important item. A virtual receptionist is another option as well. It's a low-cost way to ensure your callers can get a great experience, even when you're in those meetings or doing whatever you need to be doing. If you have a team of people, employee routing is also an option. So anyone on your team could pick up the phone. You just want to make sure that those people are trained in providing a great experience, which we'll go through a few little items on that, uh, and um, and that they know how to help people. So you just don't want people to reach a dead end if you're not available. Or you could have a dedicated in-house receptionist. If you have budget for that, it's a great option. Oftentimes people end up hiring a virtual receptionist even when they do have a full-time receptionist because we answer the phone 16 hours a day. Most receptionists don't want to work that many hours in a single day, and they have other things they need to do. So often people say, I'll have my receptionist answer the phone or I'll have my paralegal answer the phone. If that person is going to be available during all of your business hours to answer the phone and never needs to go to lunch or on break or, complete a project that really needs their focus, great. But that's probably not real life. So you're going to want to have a backup plan, whether that's a virtual receptionist or just someone else in your office who can answer. It's just super important that regardless of when people call, excuse me, they get somebody who can help them.
Hey,
So
Diana.
yeah,
Hey, it's Tom.
yeah,
I have,
yeah,
I have, I have a question for you about that. I mean, is
yeah.
another difference too between a virtual receptionist and a full-time one is that,
Mhm,
I mean, if you have a full-time receptionist, you're paying
mhm.
for full-time, whereas with a virtual receptionist, you're only paying for the calls that actually come in, right?
Right. Yes, there's generally a minimum. There's generally a base fee that you pay to have the service available all the time, and
Mhm.
then that usually includes a typical number of receptionist minutes or calls that they handle for you, and then anything within that base is just covered. And if you end up getting a whole bunch more calls, then yes, you just pay for the extra calls or the extra minutes. You don't pay for the hours that they are sitting there available for you.
Wow, that's much more cost effective.
Oh yeah, and the other thing that we really find a lot, and this is true in small firms and large, is that you are experts in the law. You are not necessarily experts in how to run a business, how to motivate employees, how to how to
Mhm.
keep your employees happy, and particularly receptionists are a very it's a different career than law, obviously.
Mhm.
And what makes often a receptionist in a law firm feels very much like the ugly stepchild. They're the only person who does what they do, and they don't feel they have, they don't feel like they have a peer group. They don't feel necessarily fully appreciated. Where all of our receptionists, this is their profession. We have 3 offices in the Portland area. We have about 350 receptionists at this point. They are all full time in the office receptionists, and that's their profession, and they are
Right.
surrounded by other people who do what they do. So they're all very supported and very, happy about it. They don't feel like the ugly stepchild, if you will.
Well, sorry about jumping in there. Just was curious about that.
Oh no, it's great. It's great.
Thanks.
Interrupt all you like. I appreciate it actually. Um, so let's see. So regardless of who answers, you want to start each call with an inviting introduction. This is something that's funny. We talk to, you often we'll call law firm and the person will answer and say law office, and you just have that feeling that I had when I was 16 years old, and I would walk in to ask my dad if I could borrow the car, and I'd say, "Hey, Dad," and he'd say, "What?" And I'd say, "Never mind, I'll ask later." But that it's not a welcoming kind of, "Hey, yeah, what do you want? I'd love to help you." So providing that warm, welcoming greeting makes a huge difference. By the way, my dad's a really nice guy, so that was not a indictment on my father. But anyway, so this idea of this gruff kind of hello, it just doesn't cut it, or law office. At Ruby, we tend to stick to a real basic formula for greetings that we found works fabulously. So whoever answers the phone, it's best to, start with showing gratitude. So, thanks for calling, or good morning, thank you for calling. Say the name of the practice so they know where they've reached. Say your name too, if you like, and then offer to help. So, it's very simple. Good morning, thanks for calling ABC Law Firm. This is Diana. How may I help you? It's friendly, it's quick, it shows the caller that you're excited that they reached out, and and I think that this is harder to do when you're sitting deeply involved in something. You're concentrating on something, trying to figure something out, doing some research, writing a brief, whatever, and the phone rings. I think it's valuable to take 1 or 2 seconds and just take a deep breath and say, okay, this could be my next big client. This could be my new best friend. This could be, some wonderfully important call that I'm going to be really happy that I answered in a very warm way, and take that deep breath and then answer the phone as if, oh gosh, I've been waiting all day for this call, so happy you called. But people can really tell when you answer the phone how you feel about the call. And they don't know that it doesn't have anything to do with them. If you're in the middle of something, they just feel put out in a way, or they feel they put you out. So anyway, once you decide on what you want your greeting to be, you just want to make sure that anyone who might answer the phone for your firm answers with that greeting, so that the callers get a consistent experience every time they call. So I don't know if you guys have a greeting, if you have something in mind of how you answer your phone, but to be a good opportunity to, you know, um, to craft one. So to just sit and think about, okay, what do I want to say when I answer the phone, and then just make sure everyone who answers your phone says just that. Excuse me. So what does this look like when we put it all together? We've shared tools for encouraging mobile users to call and discussed how to answer when they call. So now the most important piece. What's the essence of great customer experience? For starters, it's personal. It's a human-to-human connection that's formed through conversation. It stands out. It's delightful. Your callers, excuse me, gosh, your caller doesn't just want to reach another human. They want to reach someone who is invested in making their day better better than it was before they called. If you're aiming for great experience, a simple exchange of information isn't enough. It's got to be some heart in it, and of course, you need to be helpful. So your conversation may be short, so choosing the right words can go a long way in making that impression. Active listening is a way of listening and responding to another person that provides mutual understanding. Often, when people talk to each other, they're distracted, they're half listening, they're half thinking about something else. You've got to actively listen to your caller so that you can hear and understand what the issue or problem is. So, when you're answering calls, clear your work area if you can to avoid distractions. Even turn away from your computer. If you need to use your computer to take notes and try to close other applications, or at least turn off those little toaster pop things that pop up to tell you that you've gotten some really interesting email from some store that's having a sale, and your mind wanders off to if you should stop there after work. Um, so do what you can to try to minimize those distractions so that the caller really gets all of your attention. Um, and then you want to try to kind of repeat in your own words. This is just basic active listening philosophy, of confirming what the caller has said. So, I hear you saying this, or to summarize, I hear this. and just make sure that you've really restated what they said so that they know that you were listening and you understood. And then some acknowledgement of their emotions that would probably go with that. So, gosh, I can understand how that would be frustrating. That kind of a line goes a long way in helping people get that you care, that this isn't just a business transaction, but that you're a caring human being who is going to try to help them. Um, so you can really do what you can to help them understand that you're there for them and to make sure that you understand what help they need. And listening, this active listening, is really a great way to get there. So you don't have to have all the answers yourself in order to create a great experience, but you will want to have some key phrases handy. So if somebody asks you a question and you don't know, try not to say I don't know or I'm not sure, because that just kind of is a dead end for this caller experience, right? Instead, respond with something like, "Great question. I'll be happy to look into that for you," or "Let me find out for you." Just keep the focus on what you can do and help your caller to feel heard and cared for. Another great way to provide great experience is to be mindful of your caller's tone and pace. So just like you would if you're walking down the street next to somebody, that you try to walk at the same pace that they're walking, you want to try to reinforce that the caller is being heard and that you really are paying attention to them and match their tone and pace. So if the caller wants to engage you in conversation, take the time to chat with them a bit. If the caller seems really rushed and they just want to get a quick answer, do your best to give them a quick answer. If they seem upset, take your time, let them vent, acknowledge their frustration, that kind of thing, and then offer help. So while your desire to help won't waver from call to call, the way you show it might, depending on your caller's communication style. So it's important to be adaptive. There we
Hey,
go.
Diana, I was just
Yeah.
just going to say that that's really insightful because I think, and I don't want to overgeneralize, but um, I know that for my law office, when people are engaged, like sometimes it tends to be like let's talk at my pace. I
Right.
have questions that I want,
Right.
I have questions that I want to ask you, and you're gonna like defer to how I'm approaching this conversation, and um,
Mhm.
and so that's really interesting, like to basically try to match the tone and pace of your caller of your client
Mhm.
really would really help to connect and be more effective, really.
Yeah, and it makes them feel like you're more like them, so they will like you more. They will feel more
Mm.
comfortable with you. Um, and this is obviously true for clients. It's really true for anybody, And if you keep this in mind and you think like when you call somewhere and ask for some help, you call Home Depot and ask if they have the widget that you need. Um, if you'll start to notice that people who can respond to you in the same kind of way, like, "Hey, I just have a really quick question," and they go, "Great, let me give you a really quick answer," and you get it. You're like, "Oh, loved that transaction," and other
Right.
times where you want to ramble a bit more, and they are willing to ramble with you a bit, it's like, "Oh, okay, this is good. Like, I can connect with them." It really makes a difference in feeling like, these
Yeah,
are my people. This is my tribe. I feel
they
comfortable
get
here.
me. They get me.
Yeah, exactly. They get me. Exactly.
Well,
So, yeah, so a great phone experience starts with that first conversation, but it does not stop there. Before ending the call, be sure to collect any contact information and take down any notes that you need. You want to have a good record of what happens, obviously, um, and be ready to reach out to the client the next time. So, what are the next steps? So, be sure to let the caller know what you're going to do. Now that we've had this conversation, here's what I'm going to do, and here's what I'm going to get back to you, and then make sure to do that. So sometimes you say, by the end of the week, I'll get XYZ information together and I will give you a call. And sometimes you're not able to get that information together. It is wildly valuable to call them by the end of the week anyway and say, "Hey, wasn't able to get that information together. Didn't forget that I told you I would, but I wasn't able to. So, how about by Wednesday of next week I get back to you again?" But if you don't reach out to them, they think you've forgotten about them and they start to get distressed and worried. So those types of just the kind of thing your mother would tell you when you're young. Like, you make a commitment, you should follow through, even if it seems relatively minor. And they would know that if I had the information, I'd call them. Why should I call them and tell them I don't have it? Well, actually, you should. It would go a long way in helping them, helping build trust. That they trust that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, which it gets extrapolated, from the small to the large. So if you don't do the little tiny things you say you're going to do, people can worry that you're not going to do the really important things that you say you're going to do. Um, It's also, sending a friendly message or an email after a call can be a really nice touch. It's a great opportunity to share some information or merely to say, thanks for reaching out or thanks for coming to the meeting or whatever. It's another way to just bond with that person. You want your caller to have a great experience every time they call, so train anyone who's answering the call to provide a consistent, reliable service. And again, if you use these different phone numbers that we talked about earlier for different marketing campaigns, you can use the data associated with those numbers to determine which are the most successful. And we did kind of talk about this before. This will help you guide future marketing efforts and ensure that your money is spent most effectively. You can also track when you receive the calls, if there are certain times of day that you receive the calls, or certain days of the week. So maybe you seem to get most of your calls on Monday afternoon. Well, then maybe don't schedule meetings on Monday afternoon so that you are available to answer the phone and provide that experience for your callers. Um, if you rarely get calls on Fridays, then try to book all your meetings on Fridays, and know that you won't be missing so much. But just to kind of keep that in mind, that you can track that information and use it to your advantage. So, again, this is really intended to be a recipe for you to be able to handle this yourself, but it's also not always possible to handle it yourself and give everybody the great experience that you're hoping to give them. So, if you need a little help, there's a company like ours around the corner that would love to help. So, Ruby is a live virtual receptionist service dedicated to creating meaningful personal connections with your callers. We've been around for 15 years and a couple months. And we're the front line for more than 8,000 small businesses in the U.S. and Canada. Our real human service, enabled by leading edge technology, has built Ruby into a platform that small businesses, and particularly small law firms, really just rely on greatly. As I said, we answer for about 8,000 businesses, and about 42% of them are law firms. So we have a lot of experience collecting intake and handling potential new client calls and that type of thing. So, oops, next slide. There we go. As we discussed in this webinar, a positive impression is the first step in building a relationship with your clients. It showcases your commitment to service, creates trust, and sets the tone for the entire client relationship. Um, and call handling, it's just having call handling that is tailored to your practice lets you rest easy knowing that all of your callers are going to get a wonderful experience. So with Ruby and a cell phone, you have all the freedom you need to define your ideal working environment, robust call data at your fingertips to help you figure out which marketing campaigns are working well, the ability to have all your messages and calls stored in an app so that you can easily return them or check back, refer back to them at any point as well. Um, and yeah, there's other pieces of Ruby as well. I don't want to turn this too much into a commercial for Ruby, but if you would like more information about Ruby, there'll be a number at the end. One thing I do want to say is that we do integrate with Clio and Rocket Matter and Lexicata, so our messages feed straight into those softwares that can kind of streamline your operation a bit and make it easier for you. Um, so delivering exceptional experiences just shouldn't come at the expense of growing other aspects of your practice. And as Tom mentioned earlier, it's a whole lot more cost effective to have a virtual receptionist company handling your calls and providing that outstanding experience than it is to hire a full-time person, unless you have significant need for a full-time receptionist otherwise. You have a lot of walk-in traffic. You have a lot of stuff that you need someone doing in the office, and obviously that is a better choice.
Hey, Diana.
Yeah.
So I got a question from one of our listeners, Ben Farrow,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and he's asking, do you have any tips for how to deliver bad news? So for so for example, if you have
Mm,
somebody on the phone where, you got to deliver the message, sorry, the statute of limitations is run, or, something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that. Like, how
yeah.
would
I
you
mean,
recommend handling it?
there a couple little tips. I don't have any brilliant, like cure all the world's ills kinds of tips, um, but I think for us particularly, we always follow this philosophy that should be a phone call. So I'm guessing you probably know this already, but not to email people bad news. So that they have an opportunity to ask questions and to hear the caring tone of your voice, so that it's not just you know bad news, not wrapped in anything pleasant. So definitely to call them and let them know this. And then, just to be as caring as you can and understanding, I mean, and I get that this is not a legal example, but, I, you hear stories all the time of people going to the doctor and the doctor just kind of very very matter of factly telling them that they have cancer or,
Mm.
you have epilepsy or, whatever disease. And it's just like, this is just kind of routine. Like I'm a oncologist. I deal with this all the time. So I'm used to just saying to people, oh, hey, by the way, you have cancer, which is devastating, right?
Mhm.
And to just try to keep that in mind, that this is not something that that person has ever dealt with before, hopefully. So if the statute of
Yeah.
limitation has run out and they are hanging their hopes on, being able to bring this case against someone, and now they're suddenly not, that, you might have told 1,000 people that a statute of limitations has run out, but this might be the first time they've ever heard that, and it may be
Yeah.
overwhelming to them. So just to try to keep that front of, in the front of your mind of like, wow, this is going to be overwhelming, and and I have bad news, and I'm really, really sorry to deliver it, and then and then kind of pause and let them ask their questions, and if they don't, if they just pause for a long time because they're stunned, to say, gosh, are there any questions I can answer for you? Or, is there anything I can do to help at this point? To just be aware that, this might be the 20th time you've said this to someone this year, but probably the first time they've ever heard it.
Hmm. One other question that Ben had, which
Yeah.
is that a lot of what we've heard so far is about first contact. So you have that
Hmm.
potential new client calling in, but
Hmm.
this also works well for existing clients,
Yes,
right? So like if they were
for
calling in for
sure.
a case update or something.
Yes. Yeah. And to understand that you want every experience that they have with you to be like that, to be wonderful, to be they reached a live person, they were able to either get their information right then or understand when they were going to get their information. Expectation setting is enormous. The difference between leaving a message on someone's voicemail when you don't have the vaguest idea when they're going to be back and having someone say, even if, worst case, even if you could just change your voicemail, your outgoing greeting on your voicemail each morning. A million years
Mm.
ago when I worked for AT&T, every morning I would come in and record my little voicemail greeting and say, I'm going to be in a meeting from 12 to 3 and I'm available the rest of the day. So if someone did get my voicemail, if it was from 12 to 3, they knew they'd have to wait. And if they got me at 4 o'clock, and got my voicemail at 4 o'clock, they'd know I'd probably call them back really quickly. But to be able to let someone have a sense of what to expect is so comforting for people, and it lets them not panic, um, and not stress about why am I not hearing back from this person.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think it's as important on every subsequent call as it is on the very first one. I think the first one is in a little bit of a different category, only because if you don't answer that call, you're likely never to hear from that person again.
Right.
It's likely that they will just Google and find a different attorney and call them instead. It's not like there's a shortage, right? So
And, and if I was out and about, your receptionist could try to reach out to me, like where I am.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So it's just like, yeah. So in fact, in that case, it's kind of better than an in-house receptionist because often the in-house receptionist can't transfer a call outside of the office. But yeah, if a call comes in for you, we would call you on your cell phone and say, "Hey Tom, I have so and so on the line. Would you like the call?" And you could say yes, and we transfer the person through right then. Or you could say, I'm in a really noisy restaurant. Give me 5 minutes to step outside. Tell that person I'll call him back in 5 minutes. You know, or any number of things. See if Mike can answer that call instead. Try him because I think he's available. But yeah, transferring the call through live is awesome, and we have our customers keep us posted as to their whereabouts. So if they are going into a meeting or going into court, they can say, hey, I can't take calls for the next 3 hours. But it might be, I'm going to go watch my son's baseball game. I would prefer not to take calls for the next 3 hours. But if something
Right.
sounds really important, or the court's call or something like that, put that through by all means. And so then we can kind of screen them out for you at that point of saying, this sounded like, this didn't sound super important. We're going to take a message. This did sound urgent. I'm going to put this through to your cell phone.
Cool. Thanks,
And even
Diane.
at that point, we could call you on your cell phone and you could say, that isn't as urgent as you thought it was. Take a message. you know?
Right.
So you don't have to accept the call just because you answered. In fact, sometimes the receptionist will call me with a call. They'll say, I have so-and-so on the line. And I'll go, because I'm trying to decide, like, am I really in a good place to take that call right now? And my little, makes the receptionist say, we'd be delighted to take a message if you'd rather. I say, that's great. Because I'm driving and I know I'm going to have to take notes, and that's, a bad idea.
Right.
So, yeah. So Let's see. So we have a variety of plans, and obviously they're all less expensive than hiring an in-house person. And our virtual receptionists, as I said earlier, they work 16 hours a day during the week and 12 hours a day on the weekends. Obviously, no individual employee works that many hours. We have a number of shifts, and we cover 16 hours a day during the week, 12 hours a day during the weekend. Our receptionists, from the receptionist point of view, they're never sick or late or on vacation, and they never tire of impressing your callers. So they are here to try to help your firm grow and help provide an excellent experience. So that pretty much wraps up my presentation. The 5 key things that I really want you to take away in order to earn business from mobile callers. You need a phone number that's easy to find and clickable. You need a live answering someone. You need someone to answer live during your business hours. That live answer needs to be someone who is skilled in customer service and really takes these calls seriously and wants to provide a memorable, positive experience. Um, your phone experience needs to be consistent so that every time a caller calls or a potential new client calls, they get this great experience. And finally, you want to have a system in place that allows you to track your calls so you know which of your marketing efforts people are responding to, and you can spend more money there and less money elsewhere. And don't forget that Ruby's here to help. So if you need that, we would be delighted to help. We do have a special offer for listening to this webinar, and you are welcome to share it with your friends. They didn't actually have to listen to the webinar, but they had to have some connection with it. So if you are interested in Ruby and get started by the end of this month, if you use the GLSA promo code, you will save $100 off your first full month. So did you have any other questions from people, Tom?
No, that's all I had. But I think
Okay.
that's a fantastic offer, and I really love learning more about the virtual receptionist services that Ruby has and how it works, and especially how to create a great customer experience, because that's something
Yeah,
that,
and that doesn't require
yeah.
Ruby. That is, people can do that themselves, and it's really just a focus on being conscious of it and being aware of the experience that you're providing for people. And if you want to provide a great one, you generally can by yourself even.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and thoughts on this. I was wondering, how can people keep in touch with you?
There you go. One more slide. So our email address here is hello@callruby.com. And we have a special number for the GLSA, 844-234-8519. Again,
Oh,
in case you're
perfect.
not on the phone.
So just like you recommended earlier, having a number so you could track it, this one's for GLSA.
Exactly. Yeah. So if someone calls and calls that number, we will know that we should give you that $100 off. So, yeah.
Perfect.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Diana, for being my guest today, and thank you all
Yeah.
for attending our teleconference. The business call is back, capturing and converting phone leads with Diana Stepleton. And I guess, was there any last thoughts you had, Diana?
No, I don't know if anybody on the line has any, but nope, I'm good.
Okay, cool. Again, this is Tom Martin. I want to again thank GLSA for sponsoring. Remember, GLSA is just a good way for solos and small firms to increase their business. Check us out at glsaonline.org and check out Ruby Receptionist. See you next month.
Thanks, Tom.
Bye.